Good morning. I can confirm I have just received the resignation of the Chairman of the Council. Councillor Gary Groves, Vice Chairman, will therefore now take the chair.
As Vice Chairman, I start by welcoming you to the meeting. I'm obliged to inform you that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. We are not expecting a fire drill today, and in the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the room by the nearest exit and gather at the front of the building. For the benefit of those watching live stream, please use your microphone every time you speak, including when participating in a recorded vote. If you do not use your microphone, those watching the meeting remotely will not hear your voice. I call for nominations for election of the Chair of the Council to serve until the annual meeting scheduled to be held on Thursday the 13th of May 2027. Each nomination must be proposed and seconded. Only those members proposing or seconding a nomination will speak. There will be no general debate. Do we have any nominations? Chair.
I nominate Councillor Duncan Borman.
Is that seconded?
I'm happy to second that, Vice Chairman.
Are there any other nominations? So I declare Councillor Borman as Chairman of the Council for the foreseeable year. So.
Thank you. As we begin a new municipal year, it is worth reminding ourselves of the responsibility that comes with public office. The decisions taken in this chamber affect the lives, opportunities and well-being of the communities we serve, and they deserve to be made with care, integrity and respect. Robust debate is an important part of local democracy, but is at its strongest when conducted professionally and courteously. I hope that throughout the year ahead, we'll work constructively, challenge appropriately and make decisions that are lawful, transparent and in the best interests of all those we represent. I propose to take a break of about 20 minutes at approximately 12:30 to allow those of you who wish to take refreshment. It may change depending on the agenda and the duration might change depending on the length of the queue in the canteen, I think. Please, could you read the list of apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Andy Boddington, Mandy Duncan, Brendan Mellon, David Minery, Colin Stamford.
The Chief Executive has now received the resignation of the Vice Chairman. I call for nominations for the election of Vice Chair of the Council to serve until the annual meeting scheduled to be held on Thursday, 13th May 2027. Each nomination must be proposed and seconded. Only those members proposing or seconding a nomination will speak, and there'll be no general debate. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Councillor Gary Groves.
Happy to second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, I declare the Vice Chair of Council to be Councillor Gary Groves. I remind members to disclose any pecuniary and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter to be discussed, including an interest in the register of interests, and leave the chamber prior to the matter being discussed. I move that minutes of the previous council meeting held on 26 February 2026 as circulated agenda papers be signed as a correct record. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you. Sorry, I should have asked Gary Groves to second that. It's over my page. I refer members to the list of official engagements carried out by the Chair and Vice Chair since the meeting of Council on the 26th of February 2026. I'd like to add to my engagements, because it happened most recently, that I was pleased to unveil a plaque at Cambrian Heritage Railways yesterday for winning the Ban-Nuttall Partnership Award, National Heritage Award plaque, which was partly funded by Shropshire Council. I also have an announcement coming from Councillor Alex Wagner.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a statement which we have discussed with group leaders this morning about rising intimidation against councillors. We are deeply saddened by the rise in incidents of hate crime reported in recent weeks across the country and here in Shropshire, where we have seen incidents of intimidation and abuse towards our residents, our staff and our councillors. As leaders across all political groups, we stand united against abuse, intimidation and hate in all its forms. We are committed to treating one another with respect and to ensuring Shropshire remains a place where everyone feels safe and valued, and where council staff are able to serve our communities with confidence. This is not about policies, views or beliefs. It is about how we stand up together for our shared values, treating each other with respect and tolerance, and making Shropshire a place we're all proud to be a part of, where everyone belongs. Some of the items on today's full council agenda remind us of the importance of respect and of tackling abuse. In light of recent reports in the news and activity on social media, we wanted to make this clear statement. We ask others in the chamber today to join us in standing against abuse, intimidation and hate.
Thank you. In accordance with Procedure Rule 14, we will now deal with the questions from members of the public in accordance with revised procedure rules. The Service Director for Legal and Governance will read out the public questions received from members of the public who are not present. The relevant portfolio holder will respond to the questions. The first question I have is from Graham Betts.
Thank you. Yes, his question is this. Referring to the answer to my cabinet question on the 12th of February 2025, Council failed to complete highway marking and signage for public safety on Darwin's Walk and failed to adopt Bowbrook Meadows, Shrewsbury. This is despite residents paying an average of £6,621 for sill, etc., totalling £3.59 million. Antisocial, dangerous and obstructed car parking is worse than ever due to absence of control. The council website states vehicles parked on pavements, this is a police matter. Please report the matter to the police, and also by council officers. Council Guidance Note 4 states it is a criminal offence to obstruct a public right of way, referring to Section 137 of the 1980 Highways Act. Section 137 states obstruction of the highway in any way, which includes parking on pavements and cycle paths, is an offence, quoting a fine, prison sentence or both. When reported to West Mercia Police, they refused to deal with the problem and state police have no powers and no responsibility when it comes to parking in Shropshire, and we have not since 2004. Below is a quote from the Shropshire Council website. Shropshire Council is the sole agency which enforces parking matters in Shropshire. The quotation followed. Can Council please explain its apparent dysfunctional relationship with West Mercia Police regarding controlling these offences, and advise how members of the public affected by antisocial pavement parking and dangers are meant to understand this nonsense? Additionally, on what date will Council apply powers to control pavement parking under the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Act?
Councillor Wilson.
Whilst it is acknowledged that Darwin's walk development is adopted maintainable highway at the public expense, the council is currently in the process of dealing with the wider adoption of the Bowbrook development, and as a result, no highway powers exist at these locations until such a time as those streets are adopted. The council is unable to carry out any enforcement at this location at this time. Powers relating to footpath protection are currently being considered by the council, but the Department for Transport guidance on this will inform when and how this will take place. At present, there are no timescales attached to that. There also appears to be a misunderstanding of what parking is and what obstruction is. Parking relates to a wheeled vehicle and obstruction relates to anything blocking the highway. The council can enforce parking when a traffic regulation order is present. To enforce obstruction of the highway is still a matter for the police for the time being, and I will ensure officers have the appropriate engagement with the police on this.
Thank you. Next question is from Jeff Lowe.
Thank you. This question is this. I am writing as a long-term resident of Market Drayton, having lived here for nearly 60 years, to express serious concerns regarding the noticeable decline in essential council services across the town. Numerous road gullies are heavily silted and appear not to have been cleared for a considerable time, contributing to drainage problems and accelerating road surface deterioration. Could you confirm whether a regular inspection and maintenance programme exists and when these drains were last serviced? The condition of public spaces is also becoming unacceptable. Roads and pavements are visibly littered, and some litter and dog waste bins reportedly remain unemptied for extended periods. While local volunteers and businesses are commendably stepping in to help, community efforts should not be relied upon to replace core council responsibilities. The recent large-scale litter pick ahead of the town 10K event reflects the extent of the issue. There is also very little transparency regarding when these services are scheduled or carried out. I would urge the council to publish accessible schedules for drain maintenance, street sweeping and bin emptying to help restore public confidence. I would appreciate a response outlining 1. Current service schedules. 2. Any known service disruptions affecting Market Drayton. 3. Actions being taken to restore acceptable standards. And 4. Plans to improve communication with residents. If helpful, I would also be willing to walk around Market Drayton with the council or officer to discuss the issues directly.
David Lesmer.
Thank you. Shropshire Council, like many local authorities, has had to move towards a risk-based approach to maintain highway drainage, which means we use data to determine how to focus our limited resources. This approach recognises known flooding locations and parts of the network that require more frequent intervention. It is recognised that funding for highways has experienced significant pressure, and this has prevented the service from undertaking as much routine maintenance as we would like to. This has been recognised also by central government, and Shropshire has been provided with a greater funding segment for the next 4 years. This multi-year funding will provide a budget certainly allowing for better planned and preventative maintenance to not only help improve roads and to prevent potholes forming, but also allowing for more investment in drainage maintenance that we know is a vitally important part of ensuring the highway does not degrade prematurely. We are committed to publishing and engaging our future works as much as possible. With our programme of planned and programme work, we will provide advance notification, as we've done with this year's Highways Capital Programme. However, some elements of our work are reactive in nature and subject to changes, so communication in advance is not always possible. Shropshire Council recognises the concerns about streets and services and is clarifying that it is currently undergoing changes to make services more sustainable, efficient and supportive of towns seeking greater local involvement, although this transition has affected service delivery. A route efficiency review has been introduced to strengthen performance and communication, with plans to publish service frequencies once services stabilise. Some disruption has occurred due to new systems, routing changes, vehicle delivery delays and incomplete asset data, but temporary measures remain in place to maintain services while improvements are completed. The council continues to monitor performance closely and address issues promptly, and thanks residents for their patience while working toward a more resilient, transparent and customer-focused service. Finally, I will be willing to visit Market Drayton under the auspices of the Town Council to see for myself some of the issues raised and talk about their resolution.
The question from Peter Gilbert. Come on to that. Press the right-hand button to speak.
Shropshire Council declared a climate emergency in May 2019 and agreed a climate emergency strategy with the following key objective: reduce Shropshire Council's greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2030, greenhouse gas scopes 1, 2 and 3. Since the Council's emergency declaration, the climate crisis has accelerated. The 1.5 degree threshold has been exceeded for an entire year, and we are much closer to several extremely dangerous tipping points, including the collapse of the critical Atlantic current system, which would plunge the UK into Arctic winters and make it impossible to grow crops here. The Council's recent carbon monitoring report, financial year 2025, shows that because of initial slow progress in reducing emissions, the Council now needs to take a rapid descent pathway, reducing 16% per year to achieve net zero by 2030. Is the Council still committed to the original climate emergency declaration and therefore to this rapid descent pathway to achieve net zero by 2030? And if so, how will it achieve this accelerated reduction of carbon emissions?
Councillor Vasma.
Thanks, Peter, for your question. The Council remains committed to the climate emergency declaration made in May 2019 and the ambition of achieving net zero carbon emissions from its own operations by 2030. The latest carbon monitoring report highlights that a significantly accelerated rate of reduction, around 16% per year, is now required, which reflects the scale of the remaining challenges rather than any change in ambition. The Council recognises that delivering this level of reduction will be extremely challenging and is therefore focused on strengthening delivery of its existing climate strategy, including further decarbonising its estate and fleet, reducing supply chain emissions, embedding carbon considerations into decision making, and securing external funding while working with partners. The Council recognise we will still have residual emissions to offset and have initiated measures that enable some of these residual emissions to be offset locally. This includes tree planting and the installation of an energy, biochar and carbon capture system in Ludlow. The strategy will be reviewed later this year and adapted to ensure it remains evidence-led and aligned with national policy, although delivery will also depend heavily on wider factors such as decarbonisation of our supply chain, currently 97% of our emissions, technological development, funding availability and government policy.
Have your supplementary?
Yes, thank you for that. Can I ask whether staff training or officer training and councillor training will be part of the strategy going forward, and whether you intend to screen the public emergency briefing film here in Guildhall?
Oh, thanks. We do plan to screen the public emergency film, which you're talking about. I will be losing the responsibility of climate action in the changes that are taking place in the portfolios, and my colleague Councillor Sarah Martin is already talking about this. So that's something we will be looking at, and we'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just turn. Thank you.
Left button. Oh,
press it again. That's it.
Press the left or
the right. That's it. Thank you. Question from Paul Williamson, which I think is being read by a bird.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a question from Mayor of Sheffield Town Council, Paul Williamson, which I'm also a member. Is the issue of the Halesfield recycling site not being available to Shropshire residents being reviewed with discussions between Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire Council? This is a ludicrous situation with
Can we hold for 1 second? Sorry. He has got his microphone on, but it can't be heard.
No. Thank you. Shall I begin again?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this is a question from the Mayor of Shifnal Town Council, of which I am also a member. Is the issue of the Halesfield recycling site not being available to Shropshire residents being reviewed with discussions between Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire Council? This is a ludicrous situation with Shifnal residents being expected to drive to either Bridgnorth or Shrewsbury to dispose of household waste. This is going to contribute to further instances of fly tipping, and hopefully common sense will apply.
Councillor Vesma.
Thank you for the question. There has been an historic arrangement, not formal, in place between Shrewsbury and Telford and Wrekin councils regarding reciprocal use of the household recycling centres, insofar that residents in cars from both council areas can choose to use sites in either area depending on which are the nearest. The issue regarding site usage emerged in September 2024 with the proposed introduction of the booking systems for cars in Shropshire. A booking system for vans and trailers has always been in place. And Telford and Wrekin concerned that this would encourage more of our residents to use their sites because they would not have to book. A compromise was then agreed that their residents could still use Shropshire recycling centres, but would need to use the booking system while Shropshire residents could continue to use their recycling centres as normal. The booking system at Shropshire recycling centres was only in place from November 24 until January 25, but it did provide us with a detailed analysis of site usage, indicating that up to 2,500 visits per year from Telford and Wrekin residents. In October 2024, Telford and Wrekin made the decision to undertake a postcode survey at their sites, and from the information gathered, they estimated that there were over 31,000 visits annually from Shropshire residents using their recycling centres, although this is not a figure that is based on detailed analysis and a figure that we would dispute. Officers from both councils discussed this again in September 25, and the indication was that the present situation would be maintained. However, without prior warning, we received an email on the 25th of March 2026 to say that they had taken the decision to restrict access to their household recycling centres to residents of Telford and Wrekin only from the 1st of April 2026 due to the cost of our residents using their sites, which they have estimated up to 200,000. Again, a figure that we would dispute. We have informed our residents through media channels and updated our website. However, at this moment in time, residents from Telford and Wrekin can still use our recycling centres, and there are ongoing discussions between officers to find a solution at the earliest opportunity.
Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. What is the expected timescale for a resolution? And in the meantime, what practical arrangements or concessions, if any, are being made for Shifnal and surrounding Shropshire residents who would otherwise face a lengthy round trip to Bridgnorth or Shrewsbury? And has the council carried out an assessment of the likely increase in fly tipping and the additional cleansing costs it will impose on the authority? Thank you.
Thanks for your supplementary. There are discussions are being arranged between officers to try and resolve this situation. And we hope that this will be a speedy resolution. We will try as best I can to get it resolved to the benefit of all residents.
Thank you. Okay, on to questions from members. 6 members' questions allowed in accordance with procedure 15.6. Questions have been received from councillors. First question from Councillor Beverly Waite.
Thank you, Chair. Would Council please report on progress made to date on the preparation of its local transport plan 2026 to 2038 with reference to 1. Engagement activities and 2. The key objectives being set for the plan's short, medium and long-term goals, clarifying how and when active travel, a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan and the 20s plenty will be implemented as necessary throughout the county.
Rob Wilson. Quality transport choices are vital for all of our residents, whatever their age and wherever they live. The next local transport plan for Shropshire will set out the long-term strategy for the development, management and maintenance of Shropshire's highway and transport systems and will run to 2026. It will move decisively towards a vision-led approach rather than just reacting to trends. Work on the new LTP was paused by the previous administration. We took the decision to restart this vital work very soon after the local elections last year. The work completed to date and a forward plan for the ongoing development of the next LTP was reviewed by informal cabinets in October 2025. We recognise the importance of having an up-to-date LTP despite the long-standing absence of promised new guidance on LTPs from the government. When the government released details of the new multi-year local transport consolidated funding settlement in December 2025, it placed a requirement on local transport authorities to submit a local transport delivery plan setting out how they plan to use the funding, and that should be consistent with the priorities in their respective LTPs. If we had not taken the decision to restart work, Shropshire Council would not have been able to robustly set out its strategic highway and transport priorities. The government finally published the new LTP guidance on the 2nd of April this year. The government recognises that at the time of publishing this guidance, some LTAs, local transport authorities, are in the process of updating their local transport plans, and these authorities should take a proportionate approach to applying this new guidance to their LTPs. Officers are in the process of reviewing our draft LTP documents against the new guidance to ensure they align as much as possible at this stage. Cabinet is due to consider a recommendation to launch a full public consultation on the draft LTP in June. The consultation material will cover strategic objectives and a series of action areas which include active travel and road safety. The LTP will be supported by an implementation plan which covers the first 5 years of the LTP period. This will set out the interventions across all of the action areas required to deliver the strategy alongside indicative costs and funding sources. Although currently in draft, interventions are likely to include a review of the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan and the development of a speed management strategy for Shropshire that will cover all levels of speed restriction.
Do you have a supplementary?
There was, Chair, but it's just been answered for me, so no, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. It was welcome news to see that the council has decided to both remove unauthorised flags from streetlights and other highways assets and will seek to recover costs from those putting them up. However, residents across the county continue to feel frustrated and annoyed that flags remain and in some cases are being replaced by a very small group of individuals. Can portfolio holders give an update on progress towards returning the county's highways to a less intrusive, divisive and at times dangerous state due to the unauthorised flags?
Councillor Basma.
Thank you, Councillor Dean, for raising this important issue. As an administration, we do share your concerns and are taking this very seriously. To reiterate, across our communities, we recognise there are a range of views about the flags. As a council, we respect these different views. Our aim as a council is to balance these different views while keeping our residents and public spaces safe, respectful and compliant with policy. We therefore have made our position on flags clear. We support the Union flag. Putting up the Union flag is not a hate crime and we have never suggested it is. What we do not, however, support is the unauthorised attachment of flags or any other objects to street lighting columns, highway infrastructure or other public street furniture due to health and safety issues, damage and cost to residents. Nor do we support or tolerate the abuse of our staff and members. Permission is required before attaching anything to council property, and we know many residents assume this is the case. In particular, it should be noted that the unauthorised affixing of any signage or other similar item to the highway or highway structure can be deemed as a criminal offence. We are looking to prosecute, but this takes time to gather and prepare evidence, including historical evidence. Removing flags is not normal council business. It is not a statutory service and therefore it comes at an additional cost to the council and its residents, depending on the number and location of flags. But we plan to remove all unauthorised flags from our street lighting columns and other highway assets. This will be in Shrewsbury initially, with plans to remove all unauthorised flags across the county in time. Unfortunately, directly linked to the removal of unauthorised flags, we are also seeing a rise in reports of abuse, harassment and intimidation directly at our residents, staff, including our contractors, and at individual local councillors. Staff and members are being threatened for explaining the council's position when they attempt to remove any unauthorised flags, and now even in day-to-day work, repairs to street lighting. Understandably, staff, contractors and members, along with the public, are concerned, and we take their safety seriously. We cannot condone or support this action. However, to be open, this has directly impacted on the pace with which we can remove flags. We would like to take this opportunity to say this abuse is not acceptable and will not be ignored. In the case of intimidation, harassment or abuse where a criminal offence has been committed, we have in these instances strongly encouraged reporting directly to the police so they can be properly recorded and assessed. We urge people to call 101 in non-emergencies or report online. Report via True Vision at www.reportit.org.uk or call 999 in emergency if there's an immediate danger to life or violence is being used or threatened. We remain committed to working with partners to remove the flags and to do this in a safe manner for staff and residents.
Have your supplementary.
Thank you very much for that answer. No, I don't have a supplementary.
A question from Councillor Brian Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Quay Developments was created by the previous Conservative administration with ambitious promises on housing delivery, social value and financial return, all underwritten by very substantial council borrowing and presented to residents as realistic and deliverable. Since then, those promises have been repeatedly revised with reduced delivery forecasts, altered tenure assumptions and frequent references to viability chain challenges and market conditions. Given that the original Quay model, its borrowing exposure and business case assumptions were set entirely by the former Conservative administration, and that Shropshire Council's finances are now under severe strain, can the leader or the relevant portfolio holder state plainly, first, which specific assumptions in the original Quay business case have failed and why? Second, whether the current Liberal Democratic administration accepts that repeated claims of viability issues indicate a fundamental weakness in the inherited delivery model rather than short-term economic turbulence. And third, what decisive action has been taken since coming into office to challenge, constrain, or fundamentally reset that model rather than simply reprofiling targets and adjusting expectations? And in closing, residents are not asking for reassurance or political blame shifting. They want honesty about what was promised, why those promises are being revised, and who bears the risk when viability fails, and how the council intends to avoid managing decline in a company funded by council taxpayers. Repeated revising targets may be administratively convenient, but it does not address the core public concern of whether optimism has been allowed to be replaced by realism, the stewardship of public money. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor James Owen.
Thank you for the question. CDL was established as a wholly owned company to deliver new homes, including affordable housing, and to generate a return to the general fund. The original business case relied on assumptions around land values, build costs, sales values, interest rates, and a delivery pace that have since been materially affected by sustained build cost inflation, higher borrowing costs, and slower sales rates. These impacts have been reported through successive Housing Supervisory Board and Cabinet reports. The current administration has been clear that the position requires more than reprofile targets The full, thorough review of CDL has been underway for a while now, at the request of myself and senior council officers, and a report setting out options for the future of the company will be considered by Cabinet in July 2026. The analysis of options for CDL will be published as part of the report, and there will be the opportunity for residents and members to gain further clarity on the steps the council is taking to actively review the company. Finally, I wish to highlight the additional housing scrutiny panel being proposed later in this meeting, of which CDL will fall under. This is the result of a push by this administration to ensure more open and transparent scrutiny of this area by council that we believe has been sorely lacking for years, especially over the course of CDL's lifetime.
Have your supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. Only to say that the written question really was about asking for substance rather than reassurance, and I think that's what the public needs. Thank you.
Question from Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors. It is now the time for a common sense seasonal approach to flying flags along our town centre roads, working with community groups to ensure the proper use of street furniture, respect for public assets, and the prominent display of flags reflecting our country, county and heritage, including the Union flag, St George's flag and the Shropshire colour, as well as other flags that relate to the heritage of community groups of the county during British summertime, when this can best support town centre trade, tourism, civic pride, without the unnecessary cost or damage. Thank you.
David Fatima.
Thanks for your question. In the previous response to Councillor Dean, I explained in detail the Council's policy on the unauthorised attachment of flags to lighting columns and the challenges the Council faces in enforcing this policy. Just to make absolutely clear, we do not support the unauthorised attachment of flags or any other objects to street lighting columns, highway infrastructure or other public street furniture due to health and safety issues, damage and cost to residents, nor do we support or tolerate the abuse of our contractors, staff and members. In addition, we have been working with partners and have put a bid into the Home Office for funds to support engagement with all our communities around community safety and cohesion issues. We have also requested funds to support development of local flags designed for and with our communities, including our young people, that relate to our heritage and communities. These flags to be put up alongside the appropriate display of the Union flag and St George's flag.
Have a supplementary.
No supplementary.
Question from Councillor Rosemary Dahl.
Thank you. Shrewsbury Movement and Public Open Space Strategy, or Shrewsbury Moves, is designed to improve our county town. It will remove the negative impact of through traffic, boost our local economy and provide a more pleasant environment for all who live in, work in and visit Shrewsbury. The strategy relies on some people choosing alternative ways of getting around, such as bus travel, walking and cycling. For these positive changes to come about, for people to be willing to reduce car use, Shropshire Council must provide alternatives that are efficient and affordable. It's obvious that an improved bus network, including Sunday services, is needed. A wide-ranging network of safe walking and cycling routes must also be available. Bus travel, walking and cycling must be more convenient and cheaper than private car travel in order to encourage meaningful change. Fortunately, the government has provided improved bus funding from 24-25, with both capital and revenue allocations provided up to 28-29. How will this funding improve bus travel in Shropshire and in Shrewsbury? What are the plans to provide strong growth in public transport and safe walking and cycling infrastructure so that Shrewsbury Moves can be successfully implemented? And when will meaningful action take place?
Councillor Wilson.
I must start with a correction. In the last financial year, Shropshire Council had £3,073,316 to make improvements to and support our bus network across the whole county. This funding has been reduced by the government to £2,866,650 for this year and the following 2 years. Shrewsbury already has the most comprehensive bus network in the county, and whilst I agree we want to see improvements, improving bus services in isolation without addressing root problems is unlikely to be a successful or cost-effective option. London has the best bus service in the country in terms of frequency, hours of operation and cost, yet they are seeing a drop-off in usage due to congestion in the capital. Contrast that with Oxford, where the County Council has introduced bus priority measures in the city, and as a result, bus operators themselves are investing more because of increased patronage. This is why the movement public space strategy is important to Shrewsbury and for Shropshire. It has laid out a series of options for addressing congestion, improving access to the centre of our county town by all modes of transport. The MPSS is a car plan, a bus plan, a walking plan, and a cycling plan. To answer specific questions, improving bus travel with reduced funding from the government will be difficult. Growth in public transport and safe walking and cycling infrastructure cannot and should not be viewed in isolation from the MPSS. They are two sides of the same coin. Council officers are in the process of determining how the features of the MPSS can be modelled, options chosen based on that evidence, funded and implemented. Further detail on this should be available later in the year.
You have a supplementary.
Thank you. Yes, I do. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this really, that the previous Conservative administration appeared to show more leadership and energy in terms of public transport and helping residents to leave their cars at home. With a Conservative government at the time completely deaf to our request for BSIP, Bus Service Improvement Plan, funding to improve our eroded bus service in our rural county, an energetic cross-party working group was formed to improve bus services around Shropshire. Establishing of the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan. Under the Liberal Democrats, we have continued unacceptable congestion around Shrewsbury Station. No news yet on improved bus services, despite a huge amount of funding from the Labour government last year, which had not happened in previous years, and a continued multi-year settlement, which is my correction to the correction. The government has recognised this need from the very, very start. Does Councillor Wilson accept that without greatly improved bus services, including buses on Sundays, Shrewsbury Moves will struggle to get off the ground? And will he re-establish a cross-party working group?
Councillor Wilson.
I would gently refer Councillor Dartmoor. I would gently refer Councillor Dartmoor back to my answer. The Conservative government actually provided more public transport funding to Shropshire than the current Labour government. There has been a reduction of about £200,000 a year in real terms from this Labour government. I certainly hope the next Labour Prime Minister, whenever he or she is appointed, recognises that rural counties such as Shropshire need to be funded properly. We all have aspirations for better public transport that cannot be provided with cuts as we have increasing costs due to the actions of the government and the President of the United States of America. The sums just don't add up. So if we want to have better public transport in Shropshire, I really hope the Labour group will be petitioning for more money for Shropshire, whoever the next Prime Minister is.
Okay, moving on. Question from Elizabeth Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Following the community cohesion meeting held in Albrighton on the 23rd of April about the Afghan families housed at Cosford, concerns remain about the clarity of information provided. Residents were told that 25 families are currently being housed there, but when asked how many individuals this represents, no answer could be given. There was also conflicting information about how long families will remain at Cosford and whether any further placements will be made in the future. Can the Cabinet member clearly set out Shropshire Council's plan for the Afghan resettlement scheme, confirm how many individuals are currently housed at Cosford, and clarify whether those housed there will be classed as homeless and how long they are expected to remain on camp before being found settled accommodation? Can he also clarify how much this will cost the taxpayers of Shropshire?
Councillor James Owen.
Thank you. The Afghan resettlement scheme is the responsibility of the Home Office and not Shropshire Council. To answer the question, there are currently 24 households living in the SFA, which is Service Family Accommodation, on the Cosford site. This equates to 52 adults and 71 children. Any specific requests relating to future households should be directed to the Home Office. The resettlement team is currently working with families who have been housed by the Home Office on the Cosford site to secure alternative accommodation before their 3-year placement ends to avoid them becoming homeless. The date the initial cohort of families must leave the site is November 2026. No money for the Afghan resettlement scheme comes from Shropshire Council. The resettlement team within Shropshire Council, and any support provided to the families is funded out of ring-fenced grants provided by central government solely for this purpose.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Just before I go on to the supplementary, can I just clarify that is it that you don't know if there will be any more places in the future? Because it's Home Office. Is that correct?
The Home Office only makes us aware when they are placing children in the county. They don't make us aware of future plans to place.
No, that's fine. As the residents of Cosford and Albrighton were told there would not be any more housed in the future, and you are saying that you would not know that information, can a public apology be made to residents of Cosford and Albrighton for being given misleading information? Thank you.
I would have to follow up on who gave that advice to you and then follow it up with the officers. I wouldn't, as we don't know who is coming in the future, nobody should have made that comment, so.
Okay, moving on. Item 9, Scrutiny Organisation Housing Supervisory Board. I invite Councillor Alex Wagner, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Communities, to present the report. Move that report and recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the report in front of us today, I suppose, has really been a year in the making. When we took over this council 12 months ago, one of the key ambitions we had was, in the interest of openness and transparency, to make scrutiny a much more active part of sort of chamber life. I think we were of the view that towards the end of the last term, or in some ways throughout our predecessors' administration, scrutiny had been treated as something of a rubber stamp. It hadn't been used properly, and actually the real strength that you get from scrutiny, which is genuine cross-party energy and political thought and intellect and range of experience being dedicated to all sorts of issues, actually makes us stronger rather than weaker. As an administration, we very much take the view that it makes us an awful lot stronger to have members from all parties dedicating their time and energies to those topics. We decided, because of reasons of practicality really, at the start of the last year after the election, to not make any changes, or any significant changes though, to the architecture and the setup of the scrutiny arrangements at this council. There were more pressing priorities, I think most notably financially, but there were a number of changes that the leader and I felt needed to be made and needed to be prioritised before we got around to this task. The proposals, therefore, that we're bringing today are really to rebalance scrutiny and to make it a stronger and more prominent part of council life. There are two key changes. The first of which is the abolition of the Housing Supervisory Board and the introduction of a 5th Overview and Scrutiny Committee dedicated to housing. When we look throughout some of the problems that this council is facing and throughout what our residents are feeding back to us, it's very clear that a common thread has been housing. We've had questions today about Quay. That's a really good example of where we think that there hasn't been the appropriate member scrutiny historically. But we also have some slightly anomalous situations, for example, with Shropshire Town and rural housing, which is owned at arm's length. That's a relatively unusual arrangement for a council nowadays. It used to be an awful lot more common. I think we need to introduce members to the question of whether or not that's appropriate anymore. We also, of course, have planning policy issues within housing. The development of the local plan has historically been aided by a members advisory group. We're of the view that such an integral document to the future of the county and to the future of what Shropshire Council is doing on the ground oughtn't have an informal group advising it. It actually ought go through that formal scrutiny process where there's a call-in function, where there is power with the chair, the vice chair and members of the committee to really get into the guts of the issue where relevant. We also, of course, have place plans, planning development, developer contributions. I mean, SIL and 106, we had an excellent task and finish on this year, which produced some really valuable recommendations. Rather than needing task and finish groups to constantly look at these issues, actually that should be a standing item. It's one of our great powers as a council, how we charge developer contributions and what we spend them on. I've had frustrations in my own ward, and I know many members are in the same situation, where things have been funded, maybe design work has been paid for, but nothing has been delivered. Actually, this is a pretty unacceptable situation, and perhaps what makes it more unacceptable is the lack of formal procedure around challenging these decisions and around ensuring that we get the best deal for our residents. As a result, we thought that the best way of doing this would be to introduce that as a 5th full standing scrutiny committee with a regular reporting function on the local plan, on any changes that the administration might be looking to make to Quay and Star Housing, on the planning, development management, and the way that we spend those developer contributions, and making sure that we do spend our SIL in the first place. Shropshire has more in the bank than many authorities, and many would argue with little good reason for that. As a rebalancing, we're therefore also getting rid of the Housing Supervisory Board, which was set up really to scrutinise Quay, but have a sort of slightly broader remit than that, and Star Housing. It isn't a scrutiny committee, Housing Supervisory, it's a supervisory board. It doesn't have the same powers, it doesn't have the same level of influence. And actually, if we want to make these issues more prominent in the council, and our cabinet reshuffle, which is taking place today at the same time, also makes housing a standalone cabinet role. We want to prioritise these tasks, and so we're proposing that becomes a 5th full scrutiny committee, and the Housing Supervisory Board ceases to function and is removed from the Constitution. The other change we're making is slightly more minor, but I think nonetheless important and worth focusing on. We inherited the Transformation and Improvement Scrutiny Committee, but as will not have escaped most members, this administration was not pleased with the financial situation it inherited, and it was not pleased with the way that the finances were being run. We're therefore broadening the remit of that committee and renaming it to Finance and Improvement. It will have that overall council performance management function. It will, of course, centre on that key corporate plan aim of financial sustainability, but it will also link closely with the improvement board we have, which is independently chaired, and our long-term prospects on EFS and how we intend to pay that back. We want more financial plans to arrive at that committee, not just a couple of days before a cabinet meeting, but actually the broader remit to scrutinise the way we do our finance, our monitoring, our reporting, and our performance against our key performance indicators. As well as that, we think that that committee ought to pay some attention to a number of other issues. For example, we're currently undertaking a thorough asset review across the council. In the old system, it could have gone to T&I, it could have gone to various other parts of scrutiny, but we were of the view that actually it would be worth making that explicit and ensuring that members are in the headspace to understand this is a committee which wants to have more teeth, wants to have a broader function around the council's finances and performance, and we want to essentially mark a change as well as changing the name, changing some of the terms of reference. So I won't speak for very much longer, Mr. Chair, because I think in short those are the changes. The only other thing I would note is we are bringing in a number of other cabinet changes today. We circulated these a couple of weeks in advance. They took effect at 10 o'clock this morning. They include moving, as Councillor Vasma said, the sort of environment function to Councillor Marston. Most of my old communities portfolio is also with Councillor Marston. I'll be taking on a role more around transformation and economic growth, which means Councillor Wilson can focus more on implementing schemes and less on some of those big picture projects. You can find all of that information on the website, and there'll be a newsroom article later today. We also, it is worth saying, hope that means that the cabinet roles link up more closely to the committee, so it's clearer who is meant to be attending what, who you can ask the question to, frankly, who is accountable. Because I think that's a really important change. I remember speaking at Senior Leadership Forum in this room, the first time after the then interim chief executive convened it, and saying really across the council we want more pride in our work, but we also want accountability for where things aren't going to plan, and the cabinet really want to live up to that. So I'm very happy to recommend the changes we're making to scrutiny. I think it'll be a stronger council for it, and I'm hoping that members enjoy an enhanced ability to ask the difficult questions, ask the right questions, and have the right formats in which they can do it.
Okay, seconder, Councillor James Owen. Okay, Julian.
Thank you. Welcome these changes. I think this new housing committee is great. I'm just a bit concerned about where the dividing lines perhaps sit, especially with SIL spending, because some of it is still likely to be under highways, and I think just overview of SIL is so important. It does probably need a bit of clarity around that. Similarly, the local plan is sitting in two different areas, and that's going to be tricky for officers who are managing the local plan. Perhaps it seems to be in economic development as well as housing. So just be interested in how you think we can best manage that and not overburden officers turning up making similar reports to different committees. And I will be cheeky and just mention one SIL scheme which would be great, which is we could end up with a footbridge right outside of this building where one side of it is accessible, which is great to people with disability needs, but this side isn't. And that would be a nice little SIL scheme that we could do quite quickly so that we have an accessible footbridge over to the council buildings. Thank you.
Councillor Dalton.
Thank you. I want to express broad support for these changes. I think they'll give us a better view on scrutiny, particularly the new housing scrutiny, which includes what could be more important than housing in Shropshire. Really, it's fundamental, and the Housing Supervisory Board, as it is, lacks teeth, really. So I think this is great to incorporate all of housing into the one proper powered, if you like, scrutiny board, but also to bring in other areas that are of great concern to probably everyone in this room, SIL, S106 and the local plan, to bring the local plan back to scrutiny regularly through its new life, to hopefully contribute and bring it to a better conclusion this time.
Andy Davis.
Thank you. I certainly do welcome these changes. I think one thing I would like to recommend is that all the members of scrutiny do receive up-to-date training from an external organisation such as LGA from the onset, so we know sort of roles of scrutiny, what we're expected to do, and how we go about doing it, but in a national context.
Yeah, saw no one else. Councillor Owen, do you wish to speak?
Nothing to say.
Councillor Bay? No, Councillor Kidd.
I think alongside all of this, what we really have tried to do this year is do a lot more pre-scrutiny, so that Cabinet is making decisions on stuff that's coming through from scrutiny to advisors. So I think that's a really important part of it. We're hoping that we can rearrange the timing, certainly of finance and improvement, so that those bits of finance are pre-scrutinised before they come to Cabinet. It's much more open, and it includes a lot more people in those decision making, so that we share knowledge. It's very easy for things to be just invested in the Cabinet and people not to look at the papers, and therefore not understanding exactly where we are and where we're going. And if we're going to put this council right over the next several years, it's really important that we do that. So pre-scrutiny is an important part of all of these reorganisations that we've put in place. And those of you who know me know that housing has always been at the forefront of everything I've done. And therefore, I'm really, really concerned that this one works properly. And as in the past, we've always had joint working across scrutiny committees, and we need to make sure that where they overlap, as in some bits of the local plan, that goes on so we don't have duplication.
I've got two more people. Can I just make a request? I did look around the room for more hands, didn't get any, and went to the seconder for their right of reply. If you want to speak, can you put your hands up a bit earlier rather than waiting until those who have a right of reply have had theirs? So, Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, it was a response to some of the comments made. I'm delighted and welcome the focus on housing. It's long overdue, and I think it's a good step in the right direction, so I'm fully supportive of that. I would, though, urge that you look not just at housing supply. We tend to get very focused on building more housing, which is good, but also housing enforcement. And I was minded that recently I'd heard that we'd looked at some analysis on why we're bringing children into care, and we'd expect issues around drugs and issues around domestic abuse to dominate there, but we were being told that housing was dominating there. And that isn't probably supply, that's existing conditions of the housings we've got. So private sector housing enforcement and all the work that we do to ensure high quality of housing must be central to the work of this scrutiny panel. I urge it to take full account of that.
Councillor Ebbs.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would simply just like to say I'd like to thank Cabinet for, and I completely concur with many of the comments made by Cabinet, and the changeover of the housing system. It's absolutely critical. I would like to say, as chair of a SIL committee, that the cross-party collaboration we did with other members was extremely enlightening. I found the working and the relationships we formed to be extremely useful, and I look forward to working with Cabinet in the future to address SIL and other areas of planning which are so critical for the Council's future strategy.
Councillor Wagner.
Thanks very much. So just to speak to some of those points, on the kind of SIL 106 local plan reporting, I think it's important that some of this is a bit cross-cutting. So the local plan economic development side, I think it's right E&E have some sight of. But I suppose what we're hoping to kind of, make part of the institution is there is a guaranteed regular reporting function on local plan, on SIL, on 106s. One of the recommendations of Councillor Ebbs's task and finish was having an annual SIL strategy, which the administration says it's very keen on, actually making sure that those things have a regular place at scrutiny rather than an ad hoc place, I suppose is some of what we're seeking to achieve here. I should also have added in my initial remarks two things. One is that we are also we have decided to keep the chair of chairs arrangement. So for those who don't know, the scrutiny chairs each meet to coordinate or their work plans. I think the leader is there as well, and where relevant, the relevant officers are there. We've offered Councillor Potter the role of that because we think it would be better as an opposition host. Last year it was a Liberal Democrat. This year we think it should go over. We also, I just think it's worth touching on. We're speaking with the monitoring officer. We have asked broadly for the council, because it's been a while since the last one, that we get on with an independent remuneration panel to come and look at all of those schemes. Work is ongoing on that. We'll be doing that, I think, this year, it's fair to say, because it has been a few years since the last one. I think it was done under the previous administration. So we think it's important that now we've got changes that are permanent, or permanent as we see them, we look with an eye to also making permanent changes to making sure members' workload is fairly represented within that allowances system.
Okay, so move that report and recommendations are received and agreed. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Moving on, constitution committees and allocation of seats to political groups. I invite Councillor Wagner to present the report and move the report and recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you. I won't speak for long on this. This is the proportionate allocation of seats. As you'll have seen from the spreadsheet we sent around, we're also, as best we can, proportionately allocating the chairs and vice chairs of committees, which I think is a Shropshire Council first as well. So I'm hoping this is essentially a procedural paper.
Councillor Owen, seconding.
Second, yes.
Yeah. Anyone wish to speak? No. Good. I don't think you need to sum up what you just said, do you? Okay. Those in favour of receiving the report? Those against? Thank you. Scheme of delegation. I invite Councillor Wagner to present the report, move report and recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you. Again, this is a broadly procedural report. It essentially reflects what we already have in place across the council. We're always open to suggestions and recommendations about any changes to this where appropriate, but we think that this suits what we're trying to do with scrutiny at the moment, so we're happy to keep it essentially as is.
Second, Councillor Kidd. Yep. Okay, anyone wish to speak? Dawn Hughesman.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some concerns about this now, having had a year in post. So the seemingly innocuous paper hides a significant danger to local democracy. This item matters because what we are being asked to approve today is not administrative tidying up, it is a shift in where power sits in this council. The scheme of delegation before us today increases the range of decisions that can be taken away from elected members and then made by officers. This is happening at precisely the moment when residents are asking for greater transparency, stronger accountability and clearer democratic leadership. So my first concern is, what is the problem that this increased scheme is actually solving? Where is the evidence that councillors were the cause of delay or poor decision making and therefore need to be bypassed? If the answer is convenience or speed, then we need to be honest about the trade-off, because speed without scrutiny is not governance, and governance at Shropshire Council has repeatedly been highlighted as an issue, although there have been recent improvements. I've heard repeated comments made this week that decisions need to be quicker and once made should not be revisited. In principle, I agree with this. However, this is only appropriate where the decision taken originally is sound, has involved proper scrutiny and where appropriate public engagement. Where decisions are significant and controversial, the levels of member scrutiny and potentially public engagement need to be greater, not less. Since joining the council, I've become aware of numerous examples that this is not always the case. And in particular, I refer to the situation regarding Shire Hall. This historic and momentous decision required the maximum level of member scrutiny and public engagement. However, prior to the Task and Finish Group's investigation, member scrutiny and public engagement, I believe, were wholly inadequate. That is why the decision was challenged and needed to be revisited. I have genuine and significant concerns that this current proposal before us is designed to reduce member oversight and involvement around significant decisions that affect our residents. I ask the leader directly, will this policy being put in place now remove the decision on the final outcome for Shire Hall from members? Whilst you contemplate your response to that, my next concern is there is also a clear localism issue here. We have heard many warm words about partnership with town and council and parish councils, yet this scheme concentrates more authority centrally and pushes more decisions further away from local democratic voices. So I want to know what practical safeguards exist to stop parish councils and local members being sidelined, particularly on highways, important local asset disposal and infrastructure. All of these are matters of significant importance to our residents. That brings me to transparency. Concerns have also been raised at the highest levels recently about the lack of transparency relating to current delegated decisions made by officers. Now you intend to add even more to the delegated category. There is and always has been within this council a significant lack of transparency around delegated decisions. These decisions are made with no evidence, just reasoning or justification is provided. Can the administration confirm today that all delegated decisions will be published automatically, promptly, and in a way that ward members can actually track, not buried in obscure reports or discovered after residents have already contacted us? Also, can officers confirm that ward councillors will be notified before decisions affecting their decisions are taken, rather than simply being informed after the event? Because engagement after the decision is not engagement at all. Finally, I need to highlight accountability. If a delegated decision taken under this scheme leads to financial loss, reputational damage, or real harm to a community, who is held accountable? The officers who took the decision, or the elected members who were excluded from it? Because full council should be very wary of approving arrangements where responsibility remains political, but authority quietly moves elsewhere. I ask all members to consider this very carefully before agreeing to this, because once powers are given away, history shows they are rarely handed back. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Dartnell.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to question, sorry, I haven't got the exact place. It's a chief executive power, which allows to approve significant variations to existing corporate personnel policies and locally adopted conditions of service in relation to all national negotiating bodies prior to consultation with trades unions and staff, in fact, is implied, except where the financial or policy implications across the council require the matter to be referred to Cabinet. I wish to remove the words prior to and taking place, and add subject to and following meaningful consultation. Reason for that is employment law is clear that consultation must take place at a formative stage where there is a genuine opportunity to influence the outcomes. It should not follow a position which has already been formally determined. This principle is well established through case law and is reflected in statutory frameworks. In its current form, the delegation creates the potential for policies underpinning terms and conditions to be formally approved in advance of consultation with staff. That risks establishing a settled position before engagement has happened. In those circumstances, any subsequent consultation may reasonably be characterised as retrospective rather than formative.
So, did I hear you have an amendment there?
Yes, it is an amendment.
Can you just repeat that, so just for clarity?
Yes, it's on, I think it's on page 8 of the delegation. Okay, so you want me to repeat what I would like to change?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it currently says to approve significant variations to existing corporate personnel policies and local adopted conditions of service in relation to all national negotiating bodies. To add a comma, this is about legality. to add a comma, remove prior to, replace with subject to and following meaningful consultation.
So on all of those topics, just first of all, this is there are no changes in this apart from to reflect the new scrutiny committees and processes. So Councillor Husman's very eloquent speech about how we've increased delegations, I'd be interested to hear anyone able to find where we've done that, because we haven't. So there is no increased delegated authority in this document in any meaningful way. It just addresses the fact that the structure of the council has changed and some of the senior roles have changed in nature. That said, I think some of the comments from the floor are really sensible. I think some of Councillor Dartmoor's comments are eminently sensible. I would propose that, as going to the Constitutional Working Group anyway, as we can have this back at any council we want within reason, we should do this in a Constitutional Working Group or scrutiny in this with memorable. I'm not going to support any verbal amendment from the floor that we haven't seen in council had time to mean instance, and I don't think it's responsible for us to do that, given this is a status quo paper. You know, it's not making any change. So I would like suggest that we can these policies and make changes, but we ought to do it through the professionals.
I've seen your hand, Councillor Bum, but I just want to clear this up.
Do you want me to repeat any of what I said? No. Okay.
Are you happy with that assurance, Councillor Dartmoor, that it'll be taken?
My concern, yeah, I'm happy to put it in writing as well. My concern is that this is a matter of legality. I totally accept that it has been in the scheme of delegation, the one that exists now, if you like. And it's been there for some time, but it is a matter of legality.
Having heard what the officers are saying behind me, I think I really don't want to take this as an amendment without warning to this paper within the room. You know, we've all had this for plenty of time. So can we accept this gets taken forward to Constitution Working Group and then comes back if necessary?
Yes.
Yeah.
On that, I would agree, and I will give something similar with this at the LGA, where actually the formative processes have not been in place. So we do not want to put this council at risk in any way. So it will go so that we have the legislation and any new legislation that comes through in place and done properly.
Okay. Councillor Coleman.
I'm still not sure whether I'm clear whether what you're saying and what you're not saying. I completely endorse what Councillor Husman has said. I was part of the task and finish group on Shire Hall, and I'm concerned that if disposal of assets is something that's going to be delegated to officers, that would concern me. So I just would like a reassurance that that's not going to happen without further discussion.
No, it's not going to happen. We have been in the process of finding an independent somebody to come in and do both sides, because as we all know, actually the paper that the council was presented with was not as robust as it should have been. We have now found that person. It will be coming to Cabinet in July. So it will all be there for people to see, and those decisions will be made around that. That person and those people on the task and finish will see where we've got to with that and who the person is and so on. So it's all there. We're not delegating that. It will be a decision that comes back to Cabinet, right, and you will be able to see it, and everybody else to take part in all of that.
Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, my question concerns paragraphs 25 and 26, page 49, which concerns the delegation of decisions to officers, and most importantly, the recording and reporting of those. I raised this at the end of last year, and it seems to be the case that we have never recorded and reported in any form of those decisions. I find that quite an appalling situation, particularly as the extent of delegated decisions being made by officers and their inability of the public or any other councillor to see those decisions and understand the basis on which they have been made. So, I mean, this is not about changing it, but there's no point having the scheme if we can't actually enforce it. So I'm asking, what is the administration doing about this situation to ensure proper, in accordance with the scheme you've currently got, the recording and reporting of decisions that are made under delegated powers by officers or sub-delegation, as it's called, by other officers?
I'm delighted to agree with you, as usual. So thank you very much, Duncan, for all of that. Yes, these will all be reported because we were as frustrated as you were by actually not knowing what decisions are being made. And when most of these things are delegated, they're done in conjunction with the portfolio holder, and it is clear when we're making decisions where that is going to happen. But they will all be reported in the future because after 16 years of being in opposition, it's not something that I want to repeat. So changing things is important, and we will be doing it urgently.
For date?
Urgently.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding the excellent questions and answers that have been put forward, I'd just like to say that this scheme, to me, the scheme of delegation, sends some mixed messages. I think we often hear commitments to strengthening the role of local councillors and place-based decisions, yet the scheme continues to concentrate decision-making in Shrewsbury for issues affecting our rural towns and villages, and that risks weakening the value of local knowledge and rather than embedding it. That was my concern. Thank you.
Okay, nobody else. Councillor Wagner, would you like to sum up?
I think that we should have a proper cross-party discussion on the scheme of delegation at Constitution Working Group with detail. I still think it's probably not proper for us to take ad hoc amendments from the floor to something that's a fairly complex legal document that we've all had for a week or so. So I'm more than happy to just propose that we accept this for now, but if we need to bring it back to any council in future, we can always do that, and we're more than happy to listen to people.
Okay, so we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of accepting it with the caveats of the assurances that will go to Constitutional Working Group. All those in favour? So any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. So as she has an interest in the following item, the Interim Chief Executive will leave the room while this report is considered. Thank you. I do not propose to have a debate on the next two items. They've both been through a full HR process, and quite frankly, I would at least find any debate detrimental. Appointment of Head of Paid Service. I invite the Leader of the Council, Heather Kidd, to present the report and move the report and recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you. This went through an exhaustive process. We had 9 candidates. It was reduced to 5 and then 4. It then went forward to 2. It was a close run thing, and we are in a position now to appoint Tanya Miles as the new Chief Exec. I move.
Seconder?
Happy to second that.
Okay, all those in favour? Any against? Abstentions? Thank you.
Longer.
Sorry, Tanya thought it'd take a bit longer, so what we'll do the next item, because that also will be the same speed. The appointment of Monitoring Officer, the Service Director, Legal Governments. I invite the Leader Councillor Heather Kidd to present a report to move the report and recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you very much for this. As we will all know, Tim, this will be his last council meeting. I'm sure that will be mentioned later. As our monitoring officer, he wants to take a phased retirement, so we thank him for everything he's done. We went through another exhaustive process to find a new monitoring officer, and as you will see from the paper, we've appointed a gentleman who is at the present time the deputy monitoring officer in Telford and Wrekin. So it's really nice to poach somebody else's officers from time to time, as long as they don't poach ours. So I recommend that we appoint Richard Phillips as the council's permanent monitoring officer, service director and legal and governance and deputy electoral registrations officer with effect from the 29th of June 2026.
Happy to second that.
Okay. What else? I would like to personally thank Tim for the support he's given over the last year, and I'm sure all members, as this is Mr. Collard's last full council, would, no, you're not leaving the room, I think we should give him a small round of applause to thank him for it. Thank you. All those in favour of motion, and those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. In your absence, I've swapped your sign from interim to chief executive in case you. Just in case you thought anything happened in your absence. Okay, item 14, Shropshire Council Corporate Plan. I invite Leader of Council Heather Kidd to present the report and move the report and recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you very much. This has been open to members, partners and a number of different organisations to take part in pushing forward our Shropshire plan. This is to run for the next 4 years and is a plan for what we're going to do. It is the strategy document. It isn't the detail of how it's going to be implemented. And the most important area around this is that we have to become financially sustainable over the next few years to be able to do many of the very ambitious things we would like to do. Without the finances, of course, many of these things cannot actually be delivered. So financial sustainability is uppermost, but this document has clear priorities and purpose, and hoping to help our workforce to excel. Communities need to be well connected. It's all in this document, and I'm sure you've read it and you've looked at the slide deck. We need people to live in safe and inclusive places, and that's around housing and how we brought in our housing portfolio just for housing, but also housing scrutiny. An environment that harnesses our natural assets, and a thriving economy that benefits everyone, which sits across all of that. Alongside the other changes, of course, we will have to have some senior officers brought in and with external experience to help us deliver most of this, or some of this, and oversee some of that. So the action plan that comes underneath, the service directions that come underneath that, are the really important bits. These are the in a response to our new direction and everything we've heard. And I think if you talk to Tom Dodds in Scrutiny, who ran many of those sessions with partners and with elected members, they were hearing the same 3 major areas across the board. And this document reflects that. The planning and the delivery plan underneath this will be coming to Cabinet in June. And that's when you can actually see what we can do or what we can't do at the present time and where we're trying to move to. And it is seriously constrained by our financial situation, as you would imagine. But we will do as much as we can with those partners across the board to bring in money from other sources to make sure that we do as much as we can. So all of this document is there in front of you. I move the document. It's an important step that MHCLG need to see us make, and it went through Cabinet with quite a lot of support. So I thank people for that.
Secondly, happy to right now. Who wishes to speak? Who have I got? Right, Julian Dean, and I've got Ed Bird. And Dawn. Okay, so Julian first.
Thank you very much. I think there's plenty in here that we welcome. I'm completely aware that our hands are very largely tied. I imagine that the MHCLG are watching right now, and as are the LGA, and much of what we do now with the exceptional financial support that we are receiving is going to be directed by them, or certainly needs to be approved by them. So I get all that. Nevertheless, the council plan is a huge opportunity to set the tone and set the direction of travel for Shropshire. So I just wanted to make a couple of points, a couple of areas perhaps where I'm a bit disappointed. So around the sort of place shaping elements, whilst it does make reference to people living in safe, inclusive places, it doesn't quite capture that idea that I think you had put yourself, Heather, during the election, that we really want to think about the specific areas, perhaps area committees, and really beginning to give people a sense of identity with their towns and their parts of Shropshire, and to devolve some of the governance down there. And of course, in the devolution bill, which has just passed, there is specific reference to neighbourhood governance. And I think that there are opportunities there to strengthen the sense that people have and the reality that people will have in their communities about making local decision making. Frankly, even though this council chamber sits in my ward, sometimes Shropshire Council feels like it's a million miles away. And I think that's an important direction of travel that you had committed yourself to, and I just think it isn't quite as visible as it should be. And the second is on the economy. So once again, unfortunately, there is this tendency to just talk about economic sectors and economic growth and attracting investment without being very specific about what that might be. Do we want to be a centre for arms manufacturing, or do we want to be a centre for renewable energy, which we know we could actually be selling to other parts of the West Midlands, and we have a stressed farming community, and clearly we need to be supporting sustainable food production in this country. We are now threatened with a food crisis because of the complete reliance on the import of fertilizer. So there's all sorts of economic directions that we need to take. I realise that you don't want to put that in a high-level document, but I do think that some reference to saying that we are concerned to make sure that we are keeping the pound in Shropshire, that we want community wealth building, and that we want to support some sectors, but we're not going to support every sector that wants to come and plonk itself in Shropshire, would have been welcome. Thank you.
Ed Bird.
Thank you, Chair, colleagues. Is this working? That's not that. Thank you. Switch this off. Thank you, Chair and colleagues. So we must acknowledge the council is at a pivotal moment, and the corporate plan correctly identifies financial stability as a primary ambition that must underpin everything the council does. And the plan moves away from trying to deliver everything alone, and is taking on this more of a enabling role, working in partnership with the town and parish councils, hopefully, and the voluntary sector. And it will be interesting to see how this evolves. I know that locally, where I'm living in Shifnal, we are trying to work this through with the council. And the golden thread through the document explicitly linking organisational priorities through to service planning and individual staff performance reviews is welcome. The alignment alongside the improvement plan, the financial strategy, provides much needed coherent direction as we look forward. We support the focus on prevention and early intervention, as this is an effective way to reduce long-term demand on our statutory services. However, while the ambitions are well framed and the council remains in a declared financial emergency, relying on exceptional financial support. So my question is, given the plan is a strategic framework rather than a detailed delivery plan, how will the Cabinet ensure that the forthcoming service plans translate these high-level ambitions into specific tractable actions that deliver the immediate and substantial budgetary savings required to end reliance on government support? Thank you.
Don Hisman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are aware that a lot of work has gone into this document, and thank all involved for their efforts so far. I know the work hasn't completed yet, but we are where we are at the moment. A council of this scale and complexity needs a clear strategic framework. However, I have some concerns about the way the corporate plan appears to be coming forward today. From what members have seen so far, this feels less like a plan and more like a statement of intent. The ambition is understandable, but ambition on its own is not deliverable. We need to close an annual income and expenditure gap of well over £100 million per annum, and I currently see no evidence of how that might be achieved beyond aspiration. Members are being asked to note or support a direction of travel without having sight of the detail that allows proper scrutiny, and that matters both for governance and for public trust. In particular, I struggle to see clear measurable outcomes, defined milestones, transparent resource assumptions, or named accountability for delivery. Without those elements, members cannot reasonably judge whether the plan is achievable, affordable, or even testable. You talk about action plans with details, and until seen, it's difficult, so please note our reticence until these details can be investigated. There is also a risk around here of sequencing. If the council is asked to endorse the direction of travel before the full plan is available, that endorsement could later be presented as support for detail that members have not yet seen. I don't feel that's a particularly healthy position for us to be in. Finally, a county-wide corporate plan must be visible county-wide. Members will rightly expect reassurance that delivery will be geographically balanced and that rural communities and smaller settlements are not inadvertently marginalised during implementation. So my ask today is, before this plan is treated as a settled strategic framework, I would like more clarity on. I note your comments regarding more detail is coming to us at next council, but I in particular want to see more focus on how progress will be measured and reported, and how the administration will ensure genuine accountability if delivery falls short. I wholly support ambition, but I am cautious about endorsing aspiration without delivery mechanisms, intent without accountability, or direction without detail. A corporate plan should be something this council can be judged against, not something that is difficult to measure or challenge once adopted. Thank you.
See no other hands. Councillor Wagner.
Thanks. I won't speak for too long because I think the leader wants to come back on a few of those points based on her note-taking during that. But I think that it is key to stress this is a reasonably top-level document about our ambitions and what we want to focus on. I accept the comments about not being able to scrutinise the detail yet, but similarly, if council were disagreeable to the idea that these should be our priorities, why would we do the detailed work? You know, the sequencing point is important. I think the sequencing works with setting the top-level objectives and then looking to what we deliver. I think really what this plan is about, possibly before everything else, is about realism about Shropshire's situation. You know, the financial challenge we face. MHCLG, if you're watching now, we're taking it seriously and we're trying very hard to show that you know we're moving at pace. Some of that includes bringing those detailed delivery plans to Cabinet very soon, and booking in an extra Cabinet in August to ensure that those transformation and financial improvement plans can come back, making sure that scrutiny is changed so that the improvement board is part of council life rather than something sitting in a different area. I think that realism is also shared across a lot of the public sector and a lot of community and voluntary sector organisations. I think that there's across the board an understanding that we haven't focused enough on prevention. That's a sort of top level ambition that we need to ingrain into this council, that we do focus on prevention and reducing demand. I think that there's been an understanding that we haven't worked closely enough with partners or haven't been a good partner as much as anything. I think there's a growing recognition across all parties that must change and we must move quickly on it. But we've got to do that with what I think are two crises at once. The financial crisis and emergency we've been in is the obvious one, but the capability and capacity issues we have are a crisis in their own right in many ways. It makes it very prohibitive for us to bring forward policies at the pace we need to. Part of this corporate plan is about re-gearing the council so that it can start to deliver at pace again and so that it can have sensible key performance indicators, both financial and otherwise, which mean that we will be able to demonstrate to the LGA and MHCLG and all of these other TLAs that we are changing. So this is an ambitious plan in many ways at the top level, and it sets out what we were about really. But the delivery commitments are to come, and I think as much as anything, it's about being more realistic. The last plan we felt could be applied to almost any cabinet paper, any topic, regardless of whether or not it was a natural fit. We hope that this will mean that there is focus amongst both cabinet and officers as to what we're intending to deliver, and importantly, means that we can get on with how we intend to deliver it, which is the next step.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat this because I said it earlier, and I know that some hands have gone up. When I look around the room and say, has anyone else got anything to say? I then go to the seconder because they have a right to speak. I then go back to the proposer. If your hand goes up after the seconder has started to speak, I'm not going to call you. It's simple as that. That's how the process works. So the hands that have gone up since Councillor Wagner started speaking, sorry, but I'm not going to call you, and I'm going to be quite strict on that because on the last time round, about 4 of you stuck your hands up after we'd gone back to the seconder of the item. So, leader, Councillor Kidd.
Thank you. And I think many of the things that I was going to add, Alex has already covered. I'd just like to remind everybody in the room that I am a very rural member. I live on the Welsh border, and Shrewsbury is not the centre of my universe. Actually, the way our market towns work and work with their parishes is foremost in my mind all of the time. It's just that this council does have a few problems with cash, capability and capacity. So we can only do things at a particular pace. Many of those things will be referred to in action plans, and when we come forward with those in July to Cabinet, actually there will be KPIs on all of these. So yes, we will be able to measure them. There is no point in having something with its service delivery plans and so on underneath if we can't see how they are performing. So of course we're going to have KPIs that sit alongside those, and you can all have an input into whether you think those are right or wrong, or whether there should be anything extra. We will always have to bear in mind that actually our officers who are measuring these things also have limited capacity, because the organisation has far fewer staff than it has had in the past, and they have far more work to do. So we have to take all of those things into consideration. But actually what I'm hearing from you here is that by and large you agree with it. By and large, the things that are close to us, we do intend to be in there for those service delivery plans. And it is all about improvement as we can do that and as fast as we can do that. So I think I've answered KPIs for Dawn. I think I've done the fact that actually rural is vitally important, because they can often feel, and certainly when you live as I do with Montgomeryshire on 3 sides of me, you can feel very remote from Shrewsbury. And therefore that local working, as we can set it up around area committees or whatever we decide to call them, is vitally important, because when we had them in the past, they were a really important part of the future. But they didn't have the impact that they should have had. So when we set those up, they need to actually be able to do something, and do something that's going to be valuable to the running and whole of Shropshire. So it'll take some planning, and of course people will be involved in that. It won't be my plan or Alex's plan or anybody else's. It has to be for all of us. So the economy is also vitally important, and the details that are underneath that are vitally important. And yes, farming is a huge part of our economy, and certainly in my division. Apart from one major construction company who I think now employs about 250 people in my division, everything else is based really on agriculture. So yes, we understand that, and it will be included across the board, as are a number of other really exciting economic development plans, because we do have to raise the local wage offer if we need to keep our young people. So there are lots of things we need to improve as we go through all of this, and much of this we can only do by working through a robust local plan, which sits under this, but also working robustly with partners to make sure that we get what we need for the people of Shropshire. Thank you.
Okay, move to the vote. Those in favour of accepting the report and the recommendations? Those against? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay, item 15, domestic abuse partnership. I invite Councillor Ruth Houghton, portfolio of social care, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this morning I'm very pleased to present this domestic abuse strategy for approval. It's already been to Cabinet a couple of weeks ago. And I'd like to particularly thank, to use this opportunity to thank officers, partner organisations and consultees, including those with lived experience of domestic abuse, for their role in developing the strategy. And for some of those people, I'm sure it must have been very difficult for them to come forward. So we're very grateful for their input in developing the strategy that is in front of you today. So this strategy is set for 3 years through to 2029, and it sets out how organisations across Shropshire will work together over the next 3 years. We aim to reduce domestic abuse, improve safety and outcomes for victims and children, prevent escalation and repeat harm, and strengthen community and workforce responses. Importantly, it's a partnership-owned strategy developed and endorsed by our statutory partners of health, police, housing and the voluntary and community sector. You'll have seen that the strategy focuses on victims, perpetrators, workforce and the community, and by focusing on these priorities together we can support a whole system response. It's really important today that we approve this because domestic abuse causes long-term harm to both individuals, families and communities. And children exposed to domestic abuse are recognised as victims in their own right. Rurality presents additional challenges including isolation, access to services and anonymity. I've been practising that and still can't get it out. Anonymity. So a coordinated system-wide response is really essential to reduce harm and improve the outcomes. This strategy is underpinned by a very strong evidence-based and a joint strategic needs assessment and equality analysis to ensure it is inclusive, effective and compliant with our statutory duties and those of our partners. So when we look at the equality and social inclusion health impact assessment, key engagement was undertaken with a public consultation. There were 73 responses from individuals and organisations. Workshops with the Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board, engagement with the Lived Experience Advisory Group and input from internal specialists including public health and insights from research colleagues. The impact assessment found that the strategy is expected to have an overall positive impact, particularly for victims and survivors of domestic abuse, individuals within protected characteristic groups, and including health groups and those experiencing social exclusion. I just want to go back very quickly to mention more about rural Shropshire. The strategy really does recognise rurality as a defining local factor. As the leaders mentioned on the corporate plan, and we talk about it with housing, rurality does impact on many of our services. And in this case, this strategy would help to address abuse in rural areas which may remain hidden for longer. Travel, transport and the isolation risk of, or increased risk of those people suffering domestic abuse in a rural community. And our responses need to be flexible, accessible and locally informed, so a rural aware approach is embedded throughout the strategy. When we turn to assurance and the delivery and governance and accountability, this is shared across partners and overseen by the Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board, who are in turn governed by the Community Safety Partnership. A joint action plan will set out responsibilities, timescales and outcomes, and the progress will be monitored regularly through established partnership governance. This, it's important to say, is not delivery by the council alone. I've had some queries around the financial impact of this. The strategy does not create any new unfunded commitments. It will be supported through existing budgets, grant fund and partner contributions. And this year we received just under 778,000 from MHCLG. And any future investment required and decisions around that will return to members for approval. So this morning, I'm asking you to approve the Shropshire Domestic Abuse Partnership Strategy, support the shared partnership approach to tackling domestic abuse, and note the delivery, governance and accountability arrangements. Whilst I'm speaking, you may also have noticed, and you'll see them again at the end of council, slides around the White Ribbon campaign, which is protecting women and girls from violence and abuse, and you may wish to sign up for this. There will be a slide on screen at the end of this meeting to facilitate this, and I will also be sharing a link by email. And my thanks go to Councillor Dartnell for this suggestion made following Cabinet last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Radford. Okay. Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, welcome the new strategy. Domestic abuse is an epidemic which affects tens of thousands of people in Shropshire and is a major driver of both social care costs, lower health outcomes, and indeed economic deficits as well. So it's a really serious issue. My question, though, and that follows on from what the Deputy Leader was saying, we are obviously concerned about moving towards prevention. This strategy talks about prevention, but doesn't actually measure the investment. So maybe as an addendum to this strategy, we need to ascertain how much of the money we're spending on this strategy is on prevention and how much is on dealing with the after effects of people who have suffered from domestic abuse. Because if we are going to get into the remit of preventing domestic abuse from occurring, educating young people on healthy relationships and how to avoid abuse, we need to get much better at getting into that arena of prevention. So I think I would urge, and I'd ask the portfolio holder as a first step to undertake to do that analysis this year and report it back so we can have an outturn at the end of the year. Anybody else? No? Councillor Radford? No? Would you like to come back, Ruth?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kerr, and your comments around prevention are very valid. And it's always difficult to measure the impact of how much you spend on prevention, but it's important to note that the finances available across the partnership. So I think it's important that we work as a partnership board and with our partners to identify where we can impact and influence reducing domestic abuse through a preventative approach. It's also helpful that some of our partners who are in a charitable status are able to attract additional funding as well. So we'll continue to pursue that. And as I said, the budget we've had is just over 777,000. It would be helpful if there were regular grants from central government to support this really important initiative around preventing domestic abuse, which although focuses mainly on women and girls, there are also men affected by it too, by about a third to two-thirds. So it's a comprehensive strategy. I'm very pleased that it's been developed as a partnership, and that will be a partnership board overseeing implementation. Thank you.
Okay, move to the vote. All those in favour of receiving the report and recommendations? Any against? No abstentions? One abstention. Item 16, Joe Cox Civility Pledge for Councillors. I invite Leader Heather Kidd to present the report and move the report recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you. I'm sure you've all had time to read this. This is here because it's building on what I asked about for council last year, and you've all been really good at making sure that although we disagree, we are polite to one another, and the council chamber has been a much nicer place than it has been in the past. If we can disagree but do so politely, it's really much easier to work with people. If you're not setting up all sorts of bad feeling between people who disagree, then you can actually work through those differences and listen to one another in a better way. The reason that I thought it was a useful thing for us to look at here, because most of you will know that Joe Cox was murdered, and it's around what happens out in the community. And I think the way we behave here, and as we have behaved over the last year, is an important message to our residents across the board. And with everything that's going on, which is really very unpleasant out there around whether flags should be up or down or where they are, and everything that's going on in the background around that, we need to be giving that very good example. And overnight, we've had another council member seriously threatened. So actually, for us all to be able to sign up to something where we will work constructively with one another is my great wish. If you look at the civility pledge itself, what it says is use a civil and constructive tone in debate, and we've been doing that, and it's great, thank you. Act with integrity, honesty and compassion. And I think we all need to remember about the honesty piece of that. And actually how we look at facts can always differ. There will always be different interpretations, and I'm not challenging that. It's when elected members actually post things that are not true, we have a problem. And we behave respectfully towards others, including those we disagree with. So I'm here to thank you all for the way we've worked this year, and hope for the next 3 years we continue, and that you can sign up to the Civility Pledge, which is available outside. I move.
Seconding, Councillor Houghton.
I'll second and reserve my right, please, Chair.
Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Shackley Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, in principle, object to this kind of behaviour in relation to appeals to people to behave properly, because it seems to me that, in my experience, people behave well without when they instinctively want to behave well, and if they want to be evil, they will do so. I think it's rather shameful to ask a man to sign a pledge to say, for example, he will protect women. If a man, most men here will do that automatically. Those that won't, a pledge will make no difference. And I feel the same about this particular issue in relation to this pledge. I can't imagine the people here. I've never seen many examples in the last year of people behaving badly. 1 or 2 cases where people get a little distraught, but nothing serious. I welcome that. I didn't expect anything else, to be honest with you. But I understand in the past it hasn't been like that. I don't think these kind of public pledge, it's basically a kind of virtue signalling. I don't think it's necessary. I'd much rather have all of us express our disapproval of people who behave badly on a personal level. That kind of social pressure is very, very significant. And I gather from what's been said, particularly from our leader, there's been an example set this year in this council of not putting up with nonsense, and it's been effective. We don't need to sign a piece of paper. And I think it's rather shameful that we feel that we need to have people sign a piece of paper to behave well. That's my views on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Personally, as someone who's had people suggesting or inciting people to possibly be violent towards me in a group that a member of this council is a member of, I think I fundamentally disagree with what you've had to say, but there we go. Gillian.
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak for ages, but just to make the point that, I'm sure many of us were out supporting colleagues during the local elections. I know of a colleague in Solihull who I went to support, Shaheen Ashraf, who was horribly abused during the election campaign. And I just think it's pretty disappointing if we can't actually make a statement about that as public figures. Of course we should make a statement about that, just as hospital workers constantly need to be making statements about how they should be treated properly, how public transport workers say the same things, even shop workers are saying it now. There is something going on. The levels of division and hatred in our society is a real concern, and it doesn't go away naturally. It actually does require people to do something to prevent this and to fight back against it. And this is a pretty minor step, frankly, and I think we should all sign up to it.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. I want to be clear that I support respectfully conduct in public life and oppose abuse, intimidation or threats against elected members. I'm aware that councillors across the country have chosen to sign the pledge. However, I will not be signing it, and I'll explain why. Although the pledge itself has no legal force, experience elsewhere shows that it can be referenced in conduct complaints used to criticise robust political challenge and blurred with a formal code of conduct expectations. This council already operates under a clear, enforceable code of conduct. A voluntary pledge must not become an informal behaviour trust applied unevenly to opposition members, nor used over time to discourage strong scrutiny on uncomfortable debate, something we see often in the chamber, whether full council or committee. Civility should never be confused with compliance, and respectful debate should never come at the expense of free speech or democratic accountability. For those reasons, whilst I support respectfully the conduct in principle, I will not be signing the pledge. Thank you.
Are there any other hands? Councillor Dawn Husband.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I support the aim of this report and the adoption of the Joe Cox Civility Pledge, I also believe we need to be honest about why this matters so much now. Standards in public discourse have deteriorated, and too often that decline is excused, ignored, or even encouraged when it is politically convenient. It doesn't matter where the abuse or violence comes from, it is totally unacceptable. This pledge could just as easily be called the David Amos Civility Pledge. As councillors, we cannot lecture the public about respect if we are not prepared to model it ourselves. We set the tone. The way we conduct ourselves in the chamber, online and in public life gives others permission either to behave with decency or to descend into abuse. Leadership is not just about the decisions we make, it is also about the standards we uphold. At all times, we must remember that politics should be about policies, decisions and ideas, not about attacking the person. Respectful debate is healthy and necessary, but this should be based on the quality of your argument and conducted in a civilised manner. Personal attacks are wholly unacceptable. There has been a clear rise in aggression, intimidation and rudeness from some activists and sections of the public towards those with opposing views. And I support Councillor Dean's comments about how unacceptable this is when it happens out when people are canvassing. And it happens from all parties to other parties, and we have a responsibility, I think, to deal with our activists and ensure that they understand it is unacceptable. This behaviour is corrosive to democracy. Just because you disagree with what someone says does not give anyone the right to shout others down, abuse them personally, or treat political opponents as enemies. And I think I've evidenced since I got here that, I work respectfully with all members in this chamber across the board. So this is unacceptable, and behaving like this or encouraging or allowing others to behave like this, then we all lose. It drives good people out of public life and lowers the standard of debate for everyone. By supporting this pledge, I think we send a clear message about the kind of council that we want to be. I'm glad I wasn't in the previous one from stories that I've heard about it. One that disagrees but with dignity, serves with integrity and leads our communities by example. Thank you.
Sorry, you only get to speak once. Rosemary.
Thank you. We'll be signing this pledge because it won't change the ways we behave, because we're always respectful with our colleagues and find the same of our colleagues towards us. This is important. It's a Joe Cox. It's a memory of Joe Cox, who was murdered by a fascist, possibly encouraged by political division at the time. And it's making a stand about those things, about saying we can live together well. We don't need to be divided in our society. So that's why we will sign it. And absolutely right that this refers also to other people who have been killed, murdered pointlessly and in similar attacks, such as David Amos MP. So it's a very sad reflection that those people gave their lives for such division in our society, but we will of course support it and continue to be civil.
Anyone else? Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate some of those points I made, this gives us the public the assurance that we can behave, treat each other with respect and dignity, and set that example across some public sector in Shropshire and with our town and parish councils and our wider communities. So I've already signed the pledge on the way in. Disappointing that some won't, but that's a decision. But it did say that we are here as members of the elected representatives of our local communities, delivering a public service, and we should, I think, demonstrate that to our communities by signing this pledge.
Thank you. As always, as I have already done, this council has been quite different, and having worked with the LGA and experienced other councils, where actually they do descend into a bear pit and really unpleasant. I thank you all for the openness and the careful debate we've had and the good working relationships we've got across there. This is about a public statement. It is about saying this is the way we believe we have to behave if we are going to make a difference to your lives. And most members of the public do not know about the code of conduct. This is a message to everybody that actually we need, even though we disagree with people, that we need to treat everybody with respect. So I do hope all of you who can will sign the document and will support this motion. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour of receiving the report and recommendations? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 17, adoption of Much Wenlock Neighbourhood Plan. I invite Councillor Dan Thomas to present the report and move the recommendations.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman. Residents of Much Wenlock delivered a resounding yes to the future of their town, with 90% of voters supporting the adoption of the updated neighbourhood plan in March's local referendum. Today's council vote marks an historic milestone for the town, which created the first ever neighbourhood plan that Shropshire had back in 2013. The newly refreshed plan will replace the previous version and provide a robust framework for local development through to the next decade. The neighbourhood plan was a multi-year project led by a steering group of local residents and town councillors. The goal was to strike a delicate balance, preserving Much Wenlock's unique heritage while ensuring it remains a vibrant, functional town for the 21st century. The plan includes key local issues, including heritage preservation and protecting the unique character of the town and the surrounding villages, sustainable development, ensuring new housing and infrastructure meet the actual needs of the community, practicality, policies were designed to be viable and achievable within the broader Shropshire local plan. This wasn't just a document written in a council office, it was forged through listening to residents, landowners and local organisations. Whether their family has been here for generations or whether people moved here last year, their voice has been heard in building this roadmap. I'd like to thank the steering committee, the Much Wenlock community, our external consultant Alison Eardley and the Shropshire Council staff who all helped to get the plan this far. I ask all members to support the motion today, and with council approval, the Much Wenlock neighbourhood plan will form part of the statutory decision-making process for planning across Much Wenlock. Thank you.
Councillor Walker, you seconding?
Happy to second, Chair. I'll just reserve my right just in case.
Anyone wish to speak? No, I assume you don't want to come back then. Go on then.
Why would I?
Well, you said just in case.
Well, in case there was questions about neighbourhood plans or whatever. Anyway, no, Chairman, I'm more than happy to second Councillor Thomas. It's a testament to the strength of the local engagement and the power of community in terms of shaping their own future. I also want to commend everybody involved in getting this review to this point. Residents, volunteers, officers and all contributors. This has clearly taken a huge amount of effort, dedication and collaboration, and that deserves to be recognised. What we have here is not just a sound planning document, but something that is genuinely accessible and usable, a plan that local people can understand and feel ownership of, and that matters. This review reinforces Much Wenlock's role as a trailblazer, and I think it stands as a very strong exemplar for other communities, and it shows what can be achieved when neighbourhood planning is done well. And I hope others will look into this plan for inspiration. Neighbourhood planning gives communities a real voice, and this demonstrates just how effective that can be. Thank you, Chair.
Anything else to add, Dan? No? Okay, all those in favour of accepting the report, the recommendations? Those against? Thank you. Okay, we move on to motions. First motion A, just to explain, between Tim and myself, we managed to get procedures slightly wrong at the last council. And Brendan didn't get his right to reply. My printed copy says that Harry Hancock Davies is going to read the motion out. I'm not expecting you to read the motion out. I'm expecting you to do the right to reply. I don't think we need to hear the motion all over again. So if you'd like to give Brendan Mallon's right to reply, we will then move directly to a vote.
Thank you, Chairman. During the curtailed debate at our previous meeting, a number of comments were made that require a response. Our position on pyrolysis has been entirely consistent and sensible. We would not have supported the initial investment, and we voted against the additional funding last year. However, with the other parties having voted it in, we share the responsibility to ensure that we can get the best return on that investment for our taxpayers, given the current financial difficulties that we face. Thus, we were surprised to discover that it had not been considered for the Sundawn swimming pool plan. Given that the council's own officers have been promoting swimming pools as the ideal application for pyrolysis plants in our promotional materials. This was an opportunity to get a return on the council's investment and seriously ameliorate the operating costs of that expensive project. A council that has dipped its toes in speculative private ventures should be seeking to maximise returns on the large sums that are invested. We expect when the Sundawn project is eventually taken off the shelf, pyrolysis is prioritised for this as well as similar projects. During the debate, our Green colleagues accused the motion of being AI slop. The source data was taken from mainstream sources, which were cited extensively in the published motion. When Shropshire Reform make claims, we bring the receipts. If there was anything wrong with the facts or their sources, the Greens had plenty of time to do the work and to destroy the argument. Instead, we got vague invocations of the so-called climate crisis, spell, and lazy ad hominem, despite the ominous warning early in the meeting that they would humble us with their counter-debate. How can you continue to pretend climate mitigation is even possible, given that would have to be a global effort and the globe is clearly not behind it anymore, and arguably never really was? Sadly, the Green Party seemed too obsessed with foreign conflicts, identity politics, and Marxist economics to actually spend the time to inform themselves on the fact regarding what is supposed to be their trademark policy. And I assume as well that their current trademark policy is avoiding paying council tax like their party leader. We then heard the tired old argument from Labour that China is rapidly replacing their grid with wind and solar. As the principal global producer of this infrastructure, it is easy to incorporate a smattering on its grid as window dressing while they commission a new coal-fired power station every week. They use half of the world's coal and consistently break their own consumption record every year, making them the world's largest emitter of CO2 at 34% of the global total. It's like eating a massive chocolate bar and washing it down with a Diet Coke. Given their recent spying and donation scandals, it is rather surprising to hear the Labour Party openly spouting Chinese Communist Party propaganda. I wonder if the next Prime Minister will follow this too. Labour also made another tired argument that wind and solar are cheaper than traditional forms of energy. Yet somehow the United Kingdom has the highest electricity prices in the world, something we are all painfully aware of. The claim can only be made by ignoring the carbon taxes on gas and ignoring the constraint costs for wind and solar. Last year, we spent £380 million paying wind generators not to produce when there was too much wind, and a whopping £1 billion on replacement generation when wind failed. Wholesale gas prices have been at pre-Ukraine war levels for nearly 3 years, so that argument doesn't hold either. Since we last met, even more global net zero reversals have occurred than cited in the motion, including previously enthusiastic nations. As well as aforementioned U-turns in Japan and Germany, Italy has delayed its already delayed coal phase out from 2025 to 2038. South Korea, they've lifted caps on coal on coal-fired output and are extending their plants' lifespans. The Philippines have declared a national energy emergency and a massive expansion of coal use. The Netherlands, they've announced temporary coal extensions. South Africa, they've extended their coal fleet out to 2060, and there have been announcements of increases in domestic coal production in major Asian states like India, Indonesia, and Thailand. This is on top of the facts stated in the original motion. The top 3 emitters sit at 52% of global emissions and are unambiguously not decarbonising. The top 10 nations, representing 70% of emissions, are all out or leaving, given Japan and Germany's recent retreats. After last week's historical local elections, the change of power in local authorities heralds a further rollback of net zero programmes across the country, demonstrating to the public what can be achieved by cutting such spending. As nations variously edge or outright rush towards the net zero exits, Shropshire's 8-figure decarbonisation budget... that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Motion. Okay, yeah. So the actual motion on the end of Brendan Mallon's motion is, in order to reduce both capital and revenue spend, we move that council immediately suspend all net zero related spending pending review of value for money beyond clearly ineffectual reductions in CO2 emissions. All those in favour? And those against? Thank you. Okay, motion B received from Councillor Riley, supported by Councillors Barker, Evans, Hancock, Davis and Holyhead.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, just to give some context to those who may not be familiar with Western Rim. Western Rim sits at the northern edge of the boundary, Shropshire boundary. It is for the children's undertake to get to school. It's under 3 miles, so there's no statutory requirement for the Shropshire Council to provide transport. However, 39 years ago, a bypass was built, making it too dangerous for children to walk to school. And later on, that bypass neglected roundabout was turned into a dual carriageway roundabout, making it even more dangerous. However, I move this motion because it concerns one thing above all else: child safety. Whether our school transport policies are grounded in real-world evidence rather than theatrical assumptions. Shropshire's Council's current walked route assessment framework allows canal tow paths to be treated as a safe walking route. For this purpose, the school transport legibility that the classification may be lawful, but is not reasonable, proportionate, or evidence-based when applied to children. Canal tow paths present risks. They are fundamentally different from adopted footways. Unfenced watercourses, unprotected edges, seasonal flooding, ice surface degradation, low light conditions, shared use with cyclists and limited access for emergency services. These are not hypothetical risks, these are inherent features of towpaths. It is important to note that the Department for Education does not recognise canal towpaths as safe walking routes in its home to school transport guidance. While it does not list towpaths as acceptable routes, it does explicitly identify waterways and watercourses as a safety risk that must be considered when assessing route suitability. In addition, ROSPA guidance is clear that for a route to be considered safe, it must be properly maintained and managed by local highway authority. Canal towpaths do not meet this test. They are not adopted highways, they are not maintained by this council, but by the Canal and River Trust, whose maintenance priorities and standards are designed for recreational use, not daily school journeys by children. Yet our current policy often relies on assumptions rather than evidence, particularly the assumption that a child will always be accompanied by a responsible adult. The assumption does not reflect the reality faced by many working families, nor older primary age children walking independently. Treating canal towpaths as a safe walk route has a direct consequence. It removes a family's entitlement to statutory homeschool transport and transfers both risk responsibility from the local authority to parents. This is a serious decision to base on presumption rather than objective child-specific safety evidence. This motion does not seek to close canal towpath, restrict access or undermine their recreational value. It simply states that the recreational infrastructure should not be reclassified by assumption on a safe school transport infrastructure. A route that is theoretically walkable is not automatically safe for children to walk every day. In all seasons, in all conditions, when safeguarding is concerned, assumption must never replace evidence. For those reasons, I ask members to support this motion and instruct officers to bring forward revised policy wording that properly reflects national guidance, recognise the limits of local authority and puts child safety first. With that in mind, this council resolves to remove canal towpaths from classification as safe walking routes for the purpose of school transport eligibility with Shropshire Council policy. Amend the walk route assessment framework so that the assumptions of accompanying surface condition, seasonal usability and comparability with footways may not be relied on in determining route safety. Ensure that no child or family is denied statutory homeschool transport on the basis of route whose safety is assumed rather than objective evidence, and instruct officers to report back to Cabinet Council with a revised policy wording. Thank you.
Who wishes to speak? Sam.
Thank you, Chair. It is, of course, essential that decisions made by Shropshire Council prioritise the safety of children and other residents. I'm a parent. I have two daughters, and throughout their time in primary school, they walked to school, and throughout their time, I was concerned about their safety. They weren't walking on canal towpaths. They were using pavements next to roads, and there is as clear a risk there as there is on a canal towpath. A slip, a trip, or jostling from other pupils could easily put a child in front of a car, and there's the danger that represents to them is absolutely obvious to anyone. The area of South Shropshire that I live in and represent is not blessed with canals. In my younger years, when living elsewhere, towpaths were my preferred option for travel at times, offering a safe, practical and enjoyable way to get around. I would have been entirely happy for my children to use them too. Shropshire Council should not unnecessarily restrict its options in finding the best route for children to walk to school. Of course, any route needs to be risk assessed, and my understanding is that the current policy already requires that. Within that, there may be circumstances where a canal towpath offers the most appropriate route for travel to a school. With all of this in mind, and my eye very much on the safety of Shropshire's children, I will be voting against this motion.
Sorry, I didn't ask you, Councillor Riley, who is formally secondly?
Councillor Brian Evans.
I've got more than one hand going up. Okay, did you know that, Councillor Evans? Yeah. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
I seconded. Councillor Brian.
Reserving your right, Councillor Evans. Okay, so I've got Bernie Bentic. Okay, Andy Hall. I was going to come to you after you. Do you want to go now, Andy?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Rowley for his motion and acknowledge that the St Martin's Canal towpath was considered and addressed as soon as concerns became apparent. The member from St Martin's will recall my email to officers on the 17th of March this year, in which both the council leader Heather Kidd and I expressed our concerns that this route had been considered and requested that it be reviewed immediately. We have subsequently written to parents to update them that the review is now underway, and we will be and we will have confirmed that any changes have been delayed until at least September 2027, if they come into effect at all, following the review. At the time, the route was deemed the route was assessed by WSP as available and safe in accordance with the council's unsafe walking routes policy, which was approved by the previous administration's cabinet on the 8th of March 2023. Given the safeguarding concerns raised, I have asked officers to review all routes previously deemed safe by WSP to ensure that assessments are undertaken on a case-by-case basis. This work will be carried out in line with the Department of Education statutory home-to-school travel and transport guidance, which determines whether a route should be classified as unsafe. The Council will also consider the importance of any changes to the current unsafe walking routes policy, including reviewing practice in all other local authorities. The outcome of this work will be reported to Cabinet at a future meeting. It goes without saying that we all share the goal of keeping our children safe in Shropshire. In respect to the motion's request to ensure that no child or family is denied statutory transport on the basis of assumed rather than evident safety, the Council can confirm that no family has been denied statutory home transport on that basis, and this remains to be the Council's position. In addition, in considering this motion, I'm mindful of the cost of officers' time in the duplication of work, particularly at a time when this Council can afford additional expenditure. In the knowledge that the necessary reviews and assurance work are already underway to address the complexities involved, I will respectfully vote against this motion today and urge other members to do likewise. Thank you.
Mark Morris.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'd better declare an interest because I run a business where we take children from home to school for Shropshire Council. So I'll abstain on it, or I might best leave the room.
Leave the room. I'll come back to you as seconder in a second if I see no other hands. And any other hands? Bernie.
Thank you, Chair. In my own constituency of Meal, there are 2,400 students and children that walk along the roads every day or use cycling or public transport. And 3 times per term, there are road traffic collisions on the roads that approach the schools. I welcome the move to review the policy regarding safe walking routes. And I would hope that this includes the commitment of West Midlands Ambulance Service to relocate their base in Mercy and Close, which is next to Longdon Road and directly in the path of a number of young people trying to get backwards and forwards to school, and their parents who are sometimes driving them. And so I very much welcome the overall review, but reject this motion to look at a very small section of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. It's a very emotive subject. We, Carl and I, Councillor Rowley and I, sharing St Martin's Division, were shocked when we heard about this, and which led Councillor Rowley into putting forward this motion. I've got nothing written down, this is all coming from the heart, but when we had this incident happened, what we'd like to say really is that when councils make these decisions, the first point of contact should be the local councillors, us. And it was through that this motion come around. I appreciate the points raised, but I will be supporting the motion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very concerned about some of the comments that have been made. Whilst I acknowledge Councillor Hall's comments that they are looking to it, September 27th is not good enough. The school children also will be back at school by then. It needs to be sorted before then. Parents need to know, the school need to know whether or not the transport will be available. There was something mentioned about children walking on highways past. Yeah, I totally get that. Highways pass are maintained by the county council. Tow paths are not maintained by the county council. And, I've already said about the Gledford roundabout. The reason why this bus was in place is because the Gledford roundabout is too dangerous to cross. Something was mentioned about additional expenditure. the bus is already in place. What's actually going to happen is the new children, 11-year-olds, they're going to have to walk along the towpath whilst their older siblings get the bus to school. So there's no additional expenditure. It's already in place. Then we should also take into account the recent Whitchurch Canal breach, which was rendered sections of the canal and towpath unsafe and unusable for a prolonged period. If you're going to vote against this, then I want it to be on all of your conscience. Every one of you vote against it. If that canal breaches with children on it, every one of you should hold your head in shame. Every one of you. This is a child safety issue. Okay? You know, you really need to think where you're going with this. For those people who don't really know where Western Inn is either, the route was assessed from Western Inn Primary School to St Martin's School. The children also have to cross a level crossing. The path on which the level cross, the side the path is on the level crossing, there's no gate. There's no gate to crossing a high-speed railway line between Gaboin and Chirk. Children just stood there waiting for a train to cross. One push of young 11-year-old children. That's all it will take. And they will be in front of a train. And I dread to think. I absolutely dread to think. You really, really need to think about what you're voting for here. All I am asking is for towpaths to be removed from the policy, for the bus to be put back in place. And the expenditure is already there. I really, really do urge you to think about this and don't bring politics in it just to go against a reform councillor.
Move to a vote. Those in favour of the motion? Yeah. Keep your hands up, please. No. 21. Okay. Those against? Okay, abstentions? Okay, thank you. Future meeting dates, I move the dates. Sorry? Sorry, it fell. It's 38, 21, 5. 38 against, 21 for, 5 abstentions. Okay, future meeting dates. I move the dates of meetings of the council set out on the agenda be approved. Seconded. I presume all in favour? Yep. Okay, I close the meeting. I'll ask you to stay behind. I realise we're at 12:30, but we're probably more sensible to try and get the committee places done now and then all wrapped up than to come back.
I'm going to take that.
Yeah. Would people like a quick 5-minute comfort break?
Yeah.
Then we'll do the committee places and then finish properly, yeah? Yeah, 12:35. That's a quick comfort break.
I think some of the communications that you've received will have explained that all committee meetings need to take place within 28 days of the annual general meeting that we just had. So rather than call you back in a sort of piecemeal way for potentially single item agendas, which would be incredibly frustrating, we gather you all here now to try and sort all of this out and get the chairs and vice chairs elected. I'll take each committee in turn. I'll read out the list of members of that committee. In some cases, there's been apologies, so substitutes will take their place for the purposes just of this meeting. I will then call for nominations for the election of chair. That will take over the chairing of the meeting to appoint the vice chair. The meeting will then come to a close. We'll move on to the next committee meeting. It's extremely important, very helpful for committee services in particular, to have the identities of those substantive meetings. So please bear with us, we'll get through this as quickly as possible. The first committee, as shown on the screen, is the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Will the following members please stand? So Adam Pfeiffer, Alan Holford, Ben Jepcott, Chris Naylor, Wendy Owen, Sam Wolseley. I think Dawn Hughesman is substituting for Brendan, Sharon Ritchie Simmons, Ed Potter, Craig Henry. I think Donna Edmonds is absent. So please, from you, could you nominate somebody to be your chair?
Can I nominate Ed Potter, please?
Is that seconded? Yes, it's seconded. Any other nominations? I don't expect there to be, but just checking. So Ed, you are formally elected as chair of that committee.
Thank you very much. To receive apologies for absence, they've been received from Brendan Mallon, substituted by Dawn Hughesman. Item 3 is the appointment of vice chair. Can I ask for a nomination for vice chair, please? That's from me, from the chair. Thanks to Sam Walmsley. And can I have a seconder for that? Yes, thanks to Ben Jepcott seconding that. All those in favour, please show. Congratulations, Sam, you're vice chair for the forthcoming year. There's no further business. Next meeting's on the 2nd of July. Thank you.
Thank you. Next committee is the Finance and Improvement Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Will the following members please stand? Bernie Bentic, Duncan Borroman, Gary Groves, Malcolm Miles Hook, Chris Naylor, Mark Owen, Sam Walmsley, Dawn Hughesman, Charles Shackley Bennett, Ed Bird, and Rosemary Darden. Can I please have nominations for the chair of this committee?
Councillor Chris Naylor.
And is that seconded?
Seconded.
Any other nominations? Chris, you're formally in the chair.
Thank colleagues. Second item is apologies to the team. I don't think so. Third item is appointment of vice chair, and then vice chair.
Seconded.
So Councillor Dawn Hughesman is that's vice chair. Thank you very much. We close the meeting. Thank you.
Third is Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The following members please stand. Bernie Bentic, Neil Bentley, Andy Davis, Adam Pfeiffer, Rhys Grattan, Beverly Waite, Sue Eden, Dawn Hughesman. I think Nigel Lumbie is substituting for Colin Stanford, and Chris Lemon. Any nominations for chair of this committee?
I would like to nominate Councillor Bernie Bentic.
And is that seconded?
I second that.
Any other nominations? Bernie, you're in the chair.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, colleagues. And so we come to the appointment of Vice Chairman. I'm sorry, there's one apology, isn't there, Colin Stanford, with Nigel Lumbey substituting. So we come to the appointment of Vice Chairman. I would like to nominate Dawn Hoosman for Vice Chair for the forthcoming municipal year. Do I have a seconder, please?
I will second that.
Thank you, Neil. And any other? And are there any other nominations? No. And so can we go to a vote, please? Those in favour? Thank you very much. Dawn, you're appointed Vice Chair. And so yes, thank you.
Need to do number 3.
Yeah, well, I thought that also. Yeah. Yes. So the appointment of members and co-optees to the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and so this is to. So I need to ask for a proposer and a seconder, and ask for agreement. And this is for myself as the Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and to confirm the membership of the councillors Dawn Hoosman and Colin Stanford, and co-opted members Lynn Corley, Anne Mitchell and David Sandbach for the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So do I have a proposer, please? Oh, I'm proposing, and do I need a seconder? Cool. And those in favour? Thank you.
Next one is the People Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There's a slight complication with this one, but if the following members could please stand. Neil Bentley, Jamie Daniels, Mark Morris, Wendy Owen, Colin Taylor, Terry Trickett, Thomas Clayton. I think, Dawn, you're substituting for Mandy, Susan Coleman, Duncan Kerr, and Alan Mosley. Do we have any nominations for the chair of this committee, please?
I'd like to propose Mandy Duncan, Councillor Mandy Duncan.
Is that seconded?
I will second that, Chairman.
Any other nominations? So Councillor Duncan is now technically the chair of the committee, rather than appoint a separate chair for this committee. I'd like to ask for nominations for the vice chair of this committee, please.
I'd like to nominate Neil Bentley, Councillor Neil Bentley, please.
And seconded.
I'll second that.
Do you any other nominations? No, so Neil, you're vice chair. I think that's all. Yeah. Thank you very much. That meeting's snapped. Audit and Governance Committee. Read that from here. So the following members: Jeremy Blanford, Andy Davis, Rhys Grattan, Vicky Moore, John Tandy, Terry Trickett, Harry Hancock Davis, Rowley, Nigel Lumbey, Chris Lemon, and Rosemary Dartnell. Do we have a nomination, please, for the chair of this committee?
Can I propose Andy Davis as chair, please?
And is that seconded?
Seconded.
Any other nominations? No, so Andy, you're in the chair.
I will thank you that much. Thank you for attending our very first thanks very much. Any apologies? Nominations for vice chair. I nominate Rosemary Dartnell. One second.
Seconded.
Any other nominations? We are all on our committee already. It's teamwork.
Thank you. For us, you're not to be vice chair. I look forward to working with you all. And I just let me close.
So this is now audit and governance, with apologies for out of order. So please could the following members stand? Duncan Borrower, Gregory Ebbs, Duncan Kerr, Malcolm Miles Hook, Mark Owen, Sharon Ritchie Simmons, Thomas Clayton, Nigel Lumby and Kate Halliday. So please can I have nominations for the Chair of Audit and Governance?
I'd like to propose Sharon Ritchie Simmons as chair.
Is that seconded? And any other nominations? Oh, Sharon, you're in the chair.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda, apologies for absence, we've got none to report today. So I'd like to move on to number 3, which is the appointment of vice chairman for this committee. And I would like to nominate Councillor Kate Halliday for vice chair. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Those in favour? Perfect. Next meeting for us is June 25th, and I'd like to close that meeting.
Northern Planning Committee. Following please stand. Neil Bentley, Andy Davis, Gregory Ebbs, Gary Groves, Ben Jepcott, Mark Owen, Brian Evans, Carl Rowley, Ed Potter, Julian Dean and Rosemary Darn. Any nominations for chair?
Proposed Julian Dean.
Seconded?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other nominations? No, Julian, you're in the chair.
Thanks very much. Are there any apologies for absence? No, I don't think there are. Can I ask for nominations for vice chair, please?
Ben Jepcott.
Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? No, in which case Ben Jeffcott is duly elected vice chair. Thank you very much. I close the meeting.
Southern Planning Committee. Andy Boddington's given his apologies, substituted by Andy Davis, Ben Jepcott, Nigel Lumby, John Tandy, Colin Taylor, Sam Walmsley, Thomas Clayton, George Holyhead, Nick Hidnick, Rachel Connolly and Caroline Bagnall. Any nominations for chair of the Southern Planning Committee?
Can I nominate Andy Boddington?
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any other nominations? So Andy is elected in his absence. As before, I will seek nominations now for the vice chair of that committee.
It's Nick Higner.
Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Nick, you're vice chair, and I think that brings that meeting to a close. Thank you. Almost there. Almost there. Standards Committee. Councillors Duncan Borroman, Vicky Moore, Rosie Radford, apologies, Terry Trickett, Beverly Waite, Thomas Clayton, George Holyhead, Dan Thomas and Rachel Connolly. Any nominations for chair of audit?
I propose Councillor Dan Thomas, please.
Apologies.
I'll second it.
Any other nominations? No, thank you.
Item 2 is apologies for absence, but we're all here. And then item 3 is appointment of vice chairman, and I propose Councillor Rosie Radford. Do I have a second?
Yep, I second that.
Those in favour? Rosie Radford is duly appointed vice chair, and I'll now close the meeting. Thank you.
So finally, I think, Strategic Licensing Committee. Larger committee, this one. Bernie Bentic, Jamie Daniels, Gregory Ebbs, Adam Pfeiffer, Rhys Grattan, Vicky Moore, Mark Owen, John Tandy, Connor Taylor, Sue Eden, Brian Evans, Peter Hughesman, Nick Hidnett, Nigel Lumby and Chris Lemon. Any nominations, please? The chair of this committee.
I would propose Councillor John Tandy for chair.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations? Looks like you're in the chair, John.
Thank you very much, Adam and Jeremy. I
Apologies. Have we got any apologies? No, we don't seem to be have any apologies. So, appointment of vice chair. I'd like to, from the chair, nominate Brian Evans as vice chair. Have I got a seconder?
I will second it.
Right. Okay. That's okay, Brian. You are the vice chair. The next meeting of the committee is on the 24th of June at 10 a.m. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lunchtime. Thank you. Great. Thank you for bearing with us.